With us now we have Sarah Spencer, who is the director of the Office of Study Abroad.
Hello, thank you very much. I know it's the end of a very long day. When I was here on Saturday, it was a very hot and humid day, so we basically said, stay here. It's not worth going outside. But today is a beautiful day, so we appreciate all of you being here. So needless to say, whatever the weather is, I invite you to sit back and think about traveling and taking a trip. Anywhere in the world, think about where you would love to travel to, and then think about where you might want your son or daughter to travel to. So we have lots of parents who go and visit their students. So just a quick show of hands, how many of you were able to study abroad during your undergraduate studies? Just a few. How many of you have had another son or daughter who have studied abroad either in high school or in college? A lot more. How many of you have traveled outside of the US, have a passport? Wow, an amazing, great view. Well, this is kind of always an odd session for us because today is your introduction to St. Thomas. It's kind of your own pre-departure orientation. So everybody's focused on classes and finances and roommates and packing and bedding. And just as you are used to sending your daughter or son away to St. Thomas here in St. Paul in Minneapolis, I'm inviting everybody to think about going further afield. So it's always kind of an odd thing. But there is a reason why this is relevant for you today, and this is the reason. So currently 53% of undergraduate students will study abroad by the time they finish their 4 years, and many more will travel for athletics, volunteer, and music programs. In case you don't know, St. Thomas is always annually ranked in the top 10 nationally for participation by time of graduation for study abroad. So we play not just the basketball team, but we are nationally ranked as our study abroad program as well. I'm going to predict that probably 70% of you, though, will be approached or informed by your son or daughter that they want to study abroad and sometime during their 4 years. So what I hope to do is to answer some of those basic questions for you, we want you to feel that you are a bit prepared, at least on the questions, so our process and some of the questions that you might want to ask, just so your child can achieve some of their larger goals at St. Thomas. So one of the things I've been asked many times over the years, I've been at St. Thomas for almost 24 years, so a long time, is why should students and families invest in a study abroad experience? So in a global experience, because it's a major commitment to come here for university. And again, our answer to that, if the clicker will work, is to, let's see, go back to here. So the question is, how does study abroad achieve their goals? Clicker is a little, and the question to why should you invest in study abroad, we always say, is to develop global competence. And then everybody says, what does that mean? So for us, we talk about developing skills. And so when you think about study abroad, you think about language learning, right? You're going to go study abroad to learn another language, the opportunity to be immersed and to really speak, which is really hard, frankly, to do here in the US. We also have what we call host country learning, which is when and where people eat and drink, and how do they shop, and how do they spend time with their family and friends. And which sports do they follow, because they probably aren't following US football and baseball. Another skill is travel and logistics. We see students who go from not being able to kind of get themselves to point A to point B to come back, and they can book airline tickets and train tickets, and they can get around any metro in the world. And they get really good at map reading, which is, sometimes we think it might be a lost art and a lost skill. And these are skills that we talk about being culture specific, meaning that they happen when you travel from country to country. But for global competence, we think actually about what we call intercultural skills. So that's a different kind of skill. And these are these transferable skills that you can use anywhere to bridge cultural differences and to communicate effectively across different cultures. And so one of the questions we have is how spending a semester in Madrid or in Glasgow helps prepare you to be able to work in a cross-cultural team, whether you're at Target in Minneapolis or whether you're going to teach English in Japan. But how do you become a better communicator, a better observer, either verbally or non-verbally? So that's one of the things that we really see as a key part of global competence. The second one is to understand yourself and your place in the world. And so we have program evaluations for every program that goes, every student who studies abroad. In national research as well, we track a lot of national research that shows that a study abroad experience increases sense of independence, self-confidence, and comfort with ambiguity. And for those of you who are hiring managers and that you supervise and hire, those are the soft skills that you're looking at when you are looking for successful employees. I think we want students to be able to recognize others' perspectives as well as their own, and to be able to articulate and explain those perspectives both thoughtfully and respectfully. And we really see that as happens after students study abroad. We think that this ability is really essential and can be applied anywhere in the world. And I would say that my honed ability over the years was very useful when my brother brought home a wonderful woman from New York to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is our hometown. And all is well, but I have to say that that first Christmas in Iowa, there were a lot of cultural differences, both in the way that we spoke, the way we looked at conflict. We still look at conflict very differently. And we communicate, but we have different cultural styles, and that sense of knowing ourselves and knowing the other has really helped us have a wonderful relationship over the last 15 years. And we also see students, when they kind of understand themselves and are able to navigate those cultural differences, we see that they volunteer at a not-for-profit, or they raise their hand when wanting to join an international work team at work after graduation. So the other thing that we really see is that global competence is about taking action, those last two words there. We see that students are better equipped to take action in whatever is meaningful to them. So they were able to frame problems and pose solutions to real-world challenges. And you just heard Linda talk about employability and career development. And that's one of the things that we're trying, one of our highest priorities is to really prepare students for after they finish St. Thomas. Finally, it's not on the slide, but study abroad is really about enhancing the academic learning while they're here for the 4 years. We see field study, internships, community engagement, research, and it's an opportunity for students to either expand what they're learning academically, or to take a deeper dive. So to illustrate some of these things, I am going to play a digital story. We have 3 of them. We knew that it was the end of a long day, so we actually have 3 short video vignettes for you. A digital story is a new way of students coming back and reflecting on their experience and telling it visually with music and lots of photos. This is a replacement many times of the photo album, the 7 photo albums, and the kind of scrapbook, the things that I did 30 years ago. And this is Nikki, and she studied abroad in Turks and Caicos, which is in the Caribbean. She's a biology major, and she studied with School for International Studies.
The most eye-opening experience I had when studying abroad in Turks and Caicos in the spring of 2017 was through my research project working with the fishermen. I grew up fishing with my dad, but I had always thought of it as only a recreational activity. It wasn't until I lived among the fishermen of South Caicos that I realized it was much more than that. Every day that we collected data, we would dive or snorkel to do visual surveys of the fish populations on the reef. Then we headed to the fishermen's docks to identify, count, weigh, and measure their catch. Through this process, I became friends with a fisherman named Soupy. Soupy has been fishing for his entire life in order to provide for himself and his family. Throughout the semester, he would quiz us on the fish species as we were still trying to learn them, until we eventually were able to ID them almost as quickly as he did. There were some species that he called by different names than we had learned, and when we asked him why that is, he explained to us that there are some things you can study and memorize in books, and then there are some things you must learn through experience. It was through this comment that I realized he sees these fish differently than we do. To us, these fish are interesting marine organisms that we love to study, but to these fishermen, the fish were their entire livelihood. They relied on fish as a source of income, and being the avid environmentalist that I am, this was a really hard concept for me to comprehend. It wasn't until I interacted with Soupy that I understood that it wasn't really by choice. Soupy, along with many other fishermen, told us how numbers and sizes they catch have drastically decreased over the years, but yet they continue to fish because they have no other option. They have seen the changes to the reef dynamics, which is a direct result of climate change and human interference. For me, I finally realized that my actions and choices affect the friends that I have made on this tiny little island. Because of my experience on South Caicos, I am more environmentally conscious, and I strive to one day work in the sustainable fisheries field again, so that my kids and my grandkids can enjoy our beautiful ocean, along with the future generations of my friends on South Caicos.
God knows what I'm headed toward.
Great. So you can see how Nikki has a great love of the ocean and marine biology, and of course we don't have oceans here in St. Paul. So her study abroad experience really allowed her to do that and to take that deeper dive. So a final benefit, which I'm going to address, there's lots of benefits to studying abroad. But one thing to kind of keep in mind is that after students return from studying abroad, they look at career readiness and resume enhancement. And so we just mentioned career development. They run a first destination survey annually, which is where did our graduates end up after their first year. And as you can see, there is demonstrated over 6 years of data, a 20% higher employment rate for students who studied abroad than students who did not study abroad just at St. Thomas. So, I mean, we speculate why that might be true over, again, a long period of time. We see it as transferable intercultural skills. They can work from country to country, culture to culture, industry to job. They have that soft skills. They are provided with real-life examples of navigating challenging situations, taking initiative, and finding solutions. You know, all of those behavior questions that students have to answer in interviews. And I think that they can demonstrate an experience with interacting and working with people different from themselves. And that would be whether they are in a global site or actually working with people in the cubicle next to them. So just to let you know that just 10% of students will study abroad nationally. We're at 53%. We do have the Minnesota Mecca. Lots of students in Minnesota study abroad. University of Minnesota, St. Olaf, St. Ben, St. John's. Some of them are the nationally ranked programs. So if you are from Minnesota and looking to stay in Minnesota, study abroad not only can differentiate, but kind of keep you up with all of those University of Minnesota grads who are studying abroad. So that's kind of the reasoning about global competence. How does this work at St. Thomas? This is going to be the second part. Students are able to customize their own experiences, and I'm just going to give you a few quick details for you maybe to remember if it comes up. That all approved courses count for elective credit, but our intention is that they will count for major, minor, and core requirements, and over 90% of them do. So over 90% of our students who study abroad, every single course counts towards the major, minor, or their core requirements. Our philosophy is to fully integrate study abroad into their degree and to have them complete their St. Thomas degree in 4 years. So you hear a lot about four-year planning, and that is part of our philosophy. We have options for all majors, students majoring, especially for this semester. And we know that some majors, such as engineering, take a lot of planning, and they have lots of sequential requirements. So one of the things we're working with the School of Engineering is a big initiative called STEM and Oceania. Oceania is Australia and New Zealand, in case you don't know. And what we're doing is we're actually mapping course equivalencies that support our students going to study abroad for this semester and then being able to study in their world-class labs. Australia has invested in over $5 billion in higher ed and STEM research over the last 5 years. So some of the other majors might have a little bit more flexibility. Communication and journalism, called COJO, and global health of biology have a 3-course sequence that actually allow you to take 3 courses as part of that major in study abroad for the semester. Psychology, for those of you who have students, children who are looking at psychology, they've mapped out their recommended programs. And we're, of course, always working very closely with our Opus College of Business. We are starting a Shanghai business semester next spring with them with a required internship and doing business classes. So we have, students can study in over 50 countries on hundreds of programs. They can customize their length of stay, so they can study abroad for January, for the summer, for semester, and even the old junior year abroad, the academic year. They can customize further with internships, field study, service learning, and research, as I mentioned before. And that in the Office of Study Abroad, we have professional advisors who can help students narrow down their choices. And then we have academic counseling advisors, our professional colleagues, who really help students map it into their four-year plan, whichever program that they're doing. So with all of these options to think about and to consider, we do ask students to think, do they want to study abroad with fellow Tommies, if you will, or do they want to set out on their own? So to study abroad with fellow Tommies, hopefully you've heard about our programming in Rome. One of our distinctive experiences at St. Thomas is to be able to study and live in our Bernardi Center. Of course, there are many, many other places students can study other than Rome, so you'll hear a lot about Rome because we have custom design programs. Theology 101, the last bullet on the slide, has been designed for first-year students, and it's for next January. It fulfills the Theology 101 requirement. It's faculty-directed, so we have 2 faculty members who are going along to teach the class. Students live in Bernardi, and the application deadline is September 8th. We've had lots of questions about that. And hopefully you've also heard about our Rome core semester. That is aimed actually at first semester sophomores. It's open to all students. They can take 4 core classes and 2 credits of Italian. So they live also in our Bernardi Center with a St. Thomas faculty director and our full-time resident director. And as you can see, we also have London Business Semester in its 23rd year. We've had over 1,100 students study abroad on London Business Semester and Catholic Studies in Rome. We have lots of January and summer courses, over 30 that are offered each year. So our second digital story, our vignette, is Liz. She was a Catholic Studies major, and she spent a semester in Rome living in Bernardi. And hopefully this will work. There we are.
I always knew I was destined to study abroad. Did I have a desire to explore, learn, and go on adventures? Check. Was I okay with not fitting in or looking like a local? Check. Was I studying a foreign language? Check. Was I an awkward person who could thrive in uncomfortable situations? Double check. The only thing separating me from the best 4 months of my life was a plane ticket. As a Spanish minor with no fear of paving a path that other Tommies hadn't taken, you would think I would pick to study abroad in a remote Spanish-speaking country. But instead, I picked the second most popular study abroad location, where they definitely don't speak Spanish. Rome, Italy. So many friends told me studying abroad in Rome and living in the Bernardi campus was an experience unlike any other. But whatever happened to paving my own path? I thought I couldn't pick a program that other people had done. That wasn't adventurous enough. A talk with my Catholic Studies advisor confirmed a semester abroad in Rome was the best decision for my academic career. So I quickly submitted my application before I could change my mind. In Rome, I was surrounded by the Bernardi community of St. Thomas students. We all took the same classes together, cooked meals together, went to church together, and lived together. At first, I was weary of the community lifestyle. Whatever happened to studying abroad being a solo adventure? Whatever happened to my independence? Not to mention, what happened to paving my own path? But soon, these doubts were quieted. The 28 other students I studied abroad with quickly became my home away from home. Through the most challenging times, like experiencing culture shock, homesickness, studying for finals, and missing peanut butter, to the mountaintop experiences like laughing, traveling, and living everyday life, I experienced everything with this community. Life in Italy bonded us in ways I don't think I could have ever imagined. Something I quickly discovered while I was abroad was that life for 4 months in another country never really seems real. There are so many moments that are amazing, scary, breathtaking, uncomfortable, or simply unbelievable where you just need to ask someone, is this real life? And while at Bernardi, I had these people to turn to and affirm that my time abroad was in fact real. I was blessed to have this community of friends around me to experience these life-changing study abroad moments with. Not to mention, I now have a community of friends to share these lifelong memories with after I returned home.
Great. So that's Liz's story about studying in Rome. Like I said, we have hundreds of other programs all over the world. And so one of the things that we ask students to think about is, do they, again, set out on their own, which is really not on their own. If you, to be honest with you, they're studying with others, students from the host country, and they may actually be studying with other American students as well. But it's a much more integrated, immersive experience for them. We have long-standing partnerships with programs and universities all over the world, as it says, for semester and year. We vet both the academics. Our faculty work on vetting the academics and the academic quality to make sure it is at the same standard or even higher than the University of St. Thomas. And of course, we vet for safety. I'll talk about that in a minute. These are the programs that make global internships, which is a hot topic right now, and deep community engagement, again, looking at solving those real-world problems, really possible for all of our students. And these are the programs that are available for every single major. So the last digital story is Madeline. She studied abroad on the School for International Training program in India. And this is her talking about finding home in an unexpected destination.
During my semester abroad, I had lived with an Indian family, learned from Indian teachers, and made my way around one of the largest cities in India like a local for an entire semester. But it was only on one of my last days in the country that I felt at home. Up until then, I had never not felt like I was a guest in India. Indeed, I was a guest, studying the culture and traditions of parts of India for a short time and then leaving. I wore traditional dress and tried my best to learn Hindi, but my blonde hair and American accent gave me away no matter how hard I tried to fit in. 1 week before the end of the semester, everyone in my program gathered in a small town in the mountains of northern India to present to each other research projects we had been working on independently for the last month. Hill stations in India offer respite to many, natives and tourists alike. I felt especially relaxed being away from the busy city of Delhi, where I had classes, and the crowded small town where I lived during my independent study. In the mountains, there was room to move around, fresh air, and a cool breeze, all things I had been lacking until late in my semester. Sometime between inhaling the familiar scent of pine trees and realizing I had just successfully lived on my own in a small town in northern India, I settled into the comforting feeling of being home. Many people thought I was crazy for choosing such an unfamiliar destination for my study abroad experience, and living in India for 4 months wasn't always easy. But I learned so much from going outside my comfort zone, including how to find elements of home wherever I am.
That's great. So if you could envision where you wish to travel, and maybe where you'd like to visit your son or daughter, and to support where they dream, yes. I think one big question, and you may even ask this question on the way home, right? Like, where would you like to study abroad? Or we'd like to travel to this place. Maybe you want to consider that as a choice. But people have two questions. One, can we afford it? And two, is it safe? So those are always two questions that my parents asked me long ago as well. So the University of St. Thomas generously supports study abroad because most of the grants, loans, and scholarships that your son or daughter have received as part of their package apply directly to study abroad programs. Costs are comparable to being on campus, plus, of course, travel costs. And that will fluctuate depending on how much people travel. We have, all of these programs have different price points. And so it depends on the length of stay, the location, and the cost of living. So Copenhagen and London is just a lot more expensive than, say, Buenos Aires. But we talk about kind of looking at like shopping for a new car. So you think about getting a new car, it's a new car. So it's great because it's new. But think about all those add-ons and all those extra packages. In study abroad, those might mean a lot of extra travel. Semester at sea it goes on a cruise ship halfway around the world. Meals, all of those sorts of things. So we have budgets that are published for each of our programs, and if students have cost concerns and a specific budget, we work with them to find the best program for academics that actually will meet their financial budget as well. We also, the Office of Study Abroad has scholarships, and then all those partner programs that we talked about, studying out on your own, they have a wonderful array of scholarships that are also available for program participants. And obviously, you know, the news is 24 hours a day, and it is global, and we think about health and safety, and it's our absolutely first priority. We work with trusted partners, again, those long-standing partnerships. One new partner that we trust very much is actually the Learning Abroad Center from the University of Minnesota. We just approved their programs late last spring. They have 20 semester programs in Europe, South America, Asia, and Africa. So while there are our colleagues across the street, across the river, the University of Minnesota leads actually the country in study abroad programming regarding risk management, health and safety. And they also do great programs as well. So we're excited to add them as a trusted partner. We require pre-departure orientation and programming for all of our students who study abroad. We also require international insurance, which is stackable, if you will, with your insurance. So students have double insurance between both their parents or their personal and then study abroad insurance. We are on call 24 hours a day to address any sort of emergencies. I realize that we have very few of them because when I think about that, I'm rarely interrupted. But the university also has a University Action Response Team, which works together, leaders from the university works together to support any sort of student or faculty situation abroad. And then we closely follow the recommendations and warnings from the U.S. Department of State. So, as you drive home, you might want to ask them. Potentially that's 70%. We do have a study abroad fair. Our fall study abroad fair is Thursday, September 21st. Encourage your son or daughter to attend just to pick up brochures and see what's available. We also have all of our program options and information listed on our website. We're getting a new website by the end of the summer. We're very excited, so it might look a little bit dated. But I have time for about 5 minutes of questions if anybody would like to answer the group, or I will obviously stick around a little bit if you'd like a one-on-one question. Yes? So the question is, if these programs are competitive, how are students selected? So it depends on the program. So the St. Thomas programs, some of them are very competitive, and so there'll be selection criteria, which will be published on the website. Usually they're quite open, so students complete an application and then an essay. So they'll look at the quality of the essay. They will also submit an unofficial transcript, and most of our programs that are led by our faculty will do interviews, one-on-one interviews with the students. So with all of that criteria, then they select. And we also do have waiting lists as well. For our other approved programs, those partnership programs, those are usually rolling admission, and again have published criteria such as GPA, but they seem to be a little bit less competitive. Any other questions? Well, great. Well, enjoy your residence life conversation. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes if you have any specific questions. Thank you very much, and happy dreaming. Happy traveling.